Hello, everybody. My name is Yaman, and I provide daily updates on Tesla, markets, and technology. Let's get started. Markets are mixed today. Crude oil is up 0.7%. Yields are down a little bit, especially on the long run. 30-year Treasury yield is down 7 basis points. S&P 500 heat map shows Broadcom is continue to move upward. Some of the technology stocks are higher as well. Amazon, Nvidia up 1-2%. Meta is up 1%. Tesla is down 1%. Chipotle is down 3%. Real estate stocks are down. Everything else is mixed. Pretty quiet day. Stocks rise on rate cut bets. Political upheaval unsettles currencies globally. A global index of stocks was higher on Monday while the dollar fell broadly, but gained against the yen as investors grappled with political uncertainty in countries from Japan and Indonesia to France and Argentina. A heavy election defeat for Argentinian President Javier Milei's ruling party, Buenos Aires province, sent the Argentinian peso to a record low, as down as much as 7.5%. Wow. Interesting. Argentine stocks plunged more than 10%, headed for the sharpest daily drop since March 2020, raising uncertainty ahead of the key October vote. Japanese Prime Minister resigned on Sunday, ushering in a potentially lengthy period of uncertainty at a shaky moment for the world's fourth largest economy, prompting the yen to fall against the dollar. France's fourth prime minister in less than 2 years, François Bayrou, looked set for defeat on Monday, tipping the Eurozone's second biggest economy further into political and economic paralysis. And in Indonesia, stocks gave up early gains to finish lower, while the rupiah rose after finance minister was ousted in a cabinet shakeup. Friday had seen weaker than expected U.S. labor data for August, which appeared to seal the case for a Federal Reserve interest rate cut this month. The prospect of a cut and optimism that U.S. inflation data due later this week would be benign pushed down U.S. Treasury yields for the fourth straight day to their lowest levels since April. Quote, the weakening dollar against most currencies is boosting returns in foreign stock indices. There are country-by-country concerns, but a lot of news in France is priced in, and Japan's prime minister could be replaced by a much more dovish, market-friendly prime minister, said Gene Goldman, CIO at Cetera Investment Management in the U.S. MSCI's gauge of stocks around the globe rose 3.36 points or 0.4%. Okay, emerging markets up 0.6%. We read the Wall Street stuff. We talked about the yields. 2-year yield, which typically moves in step with interest rate expectations for the Federal Reserve, fell 1.6 basis points to 3.49% from 3.507% late Friday. Oil prices climbed to regain some of the last week's losses after OPEC Plus's output hike was seen as modest and due to concerns over the possibility of more sanctions on Russian crude. U.S. crude rose 0.5% to $62 a barrel. We talked about that. Gold surged past $3,600 an ounce for the first time on Monday as soft U.S. labor data reinforced expectation that the Fed will cut interest rates next week. Okay. Exclusive by Reuters. Tesla market share in the U.S. drops to lowest since 2017 as competition heats up. We've been talking about this for about a year now. Competition is heating up around the world, and Tesla is asleep at the wheel. Tesla's U.S. market share dropped to a near 8-year low in August as buyers chose EVs from a growing stable of rivals over an aging lineup offered by CEO Elon Musk's company, according to data from research firm Cox Automotive shared exclusively with Reuters. The decline highlights the threat from automakers ramping up EV incentives at a difficult time for the industry. Analysts expect EV sales bump to continue through September in the US, then drop when federal tax credits expire at the end of the month, raising financial pressure on Tesla and other automakers. Tesla, which once held more than 80% of the US EV market, accounted for 38% of the total EV sales in the US in August. For the first time, it has fallen below the 40% mark since October 2017, when it was ramping up production of the Model 3. Its first mass-market car, according to early data from Cox. While other automakers are rolling out new EVs, Tesla has turned its focus to building robotaxis and humanoid robots. delaying and canceling plans for cheaper EV models. Much of Tesla's trillion-dollar valuation hangs on that bet. Company's board on Friday proposed an unprecedented $1 trillion pay package for Musk that, apart from other operational milestones, is pegged to Tesla's value rising to $8.5 trillion over the next decade. For now, Tesla's core auto business remains its moneymaker. Its last new model was a Cybertruck pickup that rolled out in 2023, with nothing of the success of its Model 3 midsize sedan or Model Y midsize SUV. Tesla has refreshed the Model Y, once the world's best-selling car, but the changes failed to live up to expectations, and Tesla is on track toward a second year of sales decline. Quote, I know they're positioning themselves as a robotics AI company, but when you're a car company, when you don't have new products, your share will start to decline, Stephanie Valdez-Streety, Cox's director of industry insights, said in an interview with Reuters. Cox has more complete data for July, when Tesla's market share fell from 42% to 42% from 48.7% in June. The drop was the sharpest since March 2021, around the time when Ford launched its Mustang Mach-E EV, according to a Reuters analysis of the data. Musk's right-wing political work and association with President Trump also has hurt the brand. Musk helped guide Trump's efforts this year to downsize and reshape the U.S. government, but left the administration in May and had a falling out with the Republican president. Sales of new EVs jumped more than 24% month over month in July to 128,268, according to the Cox data, driven by the looming end of a $7,500 tax credit for EVs and attractive deals. Tesla saw sales rise 7%, even as its market share fell. Okay. In August, Tesla's growth slowed to 3.1%, and the broader market grew by 14%, the preliminary data showed. For years, Tesla, as the market leader, was able to increase sales rapidly and command a premium price for its vehicles, allowing it to rake in profits. But with the weakening sales and a host of competitors, Tesla has had to cut prices in recent years, squeezing its margins and worrying investors. The falling share reveals Tesla's increasingly difficult choice of sporting sales using higher profit-destroying incentives for buyers or maintain profits and giving up market share. The July data showed rivals outgrowing Tesla. Hyundai, Honda, Kia, and Toyota rolled out higher incentives than Tesla and drove up EV sales between 60% and 120%, boosting market share. Quote, these legacy manufacturers are all benefiting from this sense of urgency, and they're able to have attractive offerings for their vehicles, and it's working, Streety said. I think we're going to continue to see this momentum through September. Competition against Tesla has turned fierce at EV dealer lots. While scouring for a car for everyday use last month, Topojoy Biswas, a 41-year-old tech worker in San Francisco Bay Area, was greeted with a range of deals, including zero down payment and zero interest rates from various EV dealers. Instead of the Toyota Camry he initially was eyeing, Biswas bought a Volkswagen ID4, VW's competition to the Model Y, lured by an attractive lease price and an offer of free fast charging. VW sales rose more than 450% in July from the previous month. Wow. Quote, it felt like the deal of the market, Biswas said. All right. Let's see how September shapes up. And then, of course, October is going to be an interesting month for Tesla. Another EV news, CATL's next-year sodium-ion passes new national safety standards, ready for mass production. Battery giant CATL today announced that its next-year sodium-ion battery has successfully passed safety requirements for power batteries of electric vehicles. Certification on September 5 became the world's first sodium-ion battery to meet this new national standard. The new standard, set to be officially implemented on July 1, 2026, aims to eliminate fire risks in EVs at the source by imposing strict safety requirements across multiple dimensions, including thermal diffusion, bottom impact, and fast charging cycles. In third-party authoritative testing conducted by Automotive Testing Center of China Automotive Technology and Research Center, CATL's next-year battery demonstrated safety performance at both the cell and battery pack levels, successfully passing all tests. The next-year battery not only reduces dependence on lithium resources and creates a safer, lower-carbon battery ecosystem, but also addresses low-temperature performance issues in cold regions, promoting the adoption of new energy vehicles in China's northern and other high-latitude areas. This certification represents a milestone in the large-scale application of sodium-ion batteries. CATL previously announced in April that its next-year sodium-ion battery would begin mass production in December 2025, with initial deployment in its Troca swap electric vehicle models. The battery maintains 90% usable capacity at temperatures as low as -40 Celsius and features an energy density of 175 watt-hours per kilogram, comparable to lithium iron phosphate batteries. It supports peak charging rates of 5C, offers 500 kilometers of range, and a lifespan exceeding 10,000 cycles. Whoa, that's amazing. 5C charging, that's amazing. 500 kilometers of range, say 350 miles, lifespan exceeding 10,000 cycles. That's incredible. Yeah, this is the innovation that I thought Tesla was going to do, but it's coming from the Chinese. The company's chocolate battery swapping business has experienced growth, adding 105 new stations and activating 103 stations in August alone, marking the first time it has broken the 100 mark in both metrics. As of the end of the August, CATL has established 512 chocolate swapping stations across 34 cities nationwide. Wow. CATL has stated it aims to reach its goal of 1,000 stations by 2025 for its chocolate battery swap network. That's incredible. That's incredible. They're doing it. All right. Let's switch to our other favorite um, scandal person. More Trump tariff adjustments, including gold, were announced Friday and are already in effect. Early Monday morning, a series of tweaks to Donald Trump's tariff regime went into effect following an executive order released late Friday. Those adjustments mandated changes to how an array of goods are impacted by the current reciprocal tariff setup. Most notably, the order excluded bullion-related articles from tariffs after Trump promised action last month, as fears that gold bars would be subject to duties briefly unleashed turmoil in gold markets. The order moves other goods alongside gold onto the so-called excluded list, while removing others, meaning new tariffs are in the offing there. Finally, the order also sends some signals about what goods might be subject to tariff relief in the future. Overall, it was a notable move on Trump's tariff plans. That's because this precise reciprocal tariff authority the president exercised over the weekend has been ruled illegal by two courts, with the Supreme Court likely to make a final decision in the weeks or months ahead. This EO is significant, wrote Ted Murphy, an international trade lawyer at Sidley Austin. He said the overall message of the order is one of a move away from international rules and that basically the president will set and modify tariffs on his own initiative. If tariffs can change within 3 days of notice over a weekend, can a company really plan ahead? He added. Probably not. All eyes on the Supreme Court. Alongside gold, the order excludes selected critical minerals and pharmaceutical products, which the administration says will later be subject to separate tariffs under a different authority. It also adds tariffs to other goods by removing their excluded status from Trump's reciprocal tariffs that stretch around the globe. Products impacted there include aluminum hydroxide, resin, and silicon products. Other goods aren't seeing their status change immediately, but language in the order signaled that they could potentially find themselves excluded in future trade deals. The administration offered four categories there: certain aircraft and aircraft parts, generic pharmaceuticals, natural resources that are unavailable in the US, and certain agricultural products not grown or produced in sufficient quantity in the US to meet domestic demand. The last category, while details remain scarce for now, could be a sign of possible relief down the road for certain products that have few options but to pay tariffs because they can't easily be widely produced in the US. Let's switch to this one first, and now we're going to go to the other one. Besant turns up. Sorry, that's not the one I want to talk about. I guess it's this one then. Besant warns of massive refunds if Supreme Court rules against tariffs. The U.S. Treasury Department would have to give rebates if the Supreme Court decides that President Trump's reciprocal tariffs went beyond his authority, Besson said Sunday. We would have to give a refund on about half the tariffs, which would be terrible for the Treasury, Besson said. Amid legal questions hanging over tariffs, Trump has asked the Supreme Court for an immediate hearing in hopes of overturning an appeals court ruling that deemed most of his tariffs illegal. His administration called for the High Court to put the case on a highly expedited schedule, with arguments starting in early November, according to filings. Trump suggested that the U.S. may have to unwind existing trade deals, including with the European Union, Japan, and South Korea, if the Supreme Court doesn't uphold the tariffs. Meanwhile, Trump said he wants experts to help train U.S. workers after an immigration raid at a South Korean-owned EV battery factory in Georgia. Quote, you don't have people in this country who know about batteries, Trump told reporters Sunday. Maybe we should help them along and let some people come in and train our people. Elsewhere, postal traffic to the U.S. dropped more than 80% after the Trump administration ended the de minimis tariff exemption for low-cost imports, the UN Postal Agency said Saturday. And on Friday, Trump signed an executive order exempting gold, tungsten, and uranium from global tariffs. Wow. Postal traffic to the US dropped 80%, more than 80%, just because of this de minimis tariff exemption for low cost imports. That's crazy. Trump also cemented and signed an executive order last week implementing the US's pact with Japan. Did I just read that right? That's fucking crazy. Let's read that. Okay. Trump also cemented and signed an executive order last week implementing the US's pact with Japan. But despite this, many of Trump's tariffs remain tied up in legal battles. A federal appeals court ruled that most of Trump's global tariffs were illegal, reaffirming an earlier ruling by the Court of International Trade and saying he exceeded authority in using emergency powers to impose them. That means reciprocal tariffs Trump unveiled on dozens of U.S. trade partners, which you can see in the graphic above, now face legal limbo. Elsewhere, Trump has said that he's not considering lowering tariffs on India after U.S. doubled duties on its imports in response to India's purchase of the Russian oil. All right. Duty free no more. Parcels worth under $800 no longer qualify for a U.S. tariff exemption. Low Valley imports lost their duty-free status in the U.S. on Friday as part of President Trump's agenda for making the nation less dependent on foreign goods and resetting global trade with tariffs. An executive order eliminated a widely used customs exemption for international shipments worth $800 or less as of 12:01 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time, nearly 2 years earlier than the deadline set in the Tax Cuts and Spending Bill approved by Congress. Saying they received too little time and information to start collecting duties on small parcels, the National Postal Services of more than 30 countries have temporarily suspended sending some or most US-bound packages. They include the mail systems of Australia, New Zealand, India, Japan, Mexico, Thailand, and almost every country in Europe. Purchases that previously entered the US without needing to clear customs will require vetting and be subject to their origin country's applicable tariff rate, which can range from 10 to 50%. For the next 6 months, mail carriers can instead apply a flat duty of $80 to $200 to packages sent through the global postal network. After that, both mailed parcels and those handled by private courier services will be subject to the value-based tariff rate. Although the president previously ended the de minimis rule for inexpensive items sent from China and Hong Kong, having to pay import taxes on small parcels from everywhere else likely will be a big change for some small businesses and online shoppers. In addition to bringing new costs, the withdrawal or duty-free treatment is likely to delay orders, according to logistics experts. Exemption created in 1938 for $1 imports. Wow. Trump administration says the exemption has become a loophole for foreign businesses exploit to evade tariffs and criminals use to get drugs, counterfeit products, and other contraband into U.S. Former President Joe Biden and members of Congress also discussed the issue. Other countries have similar exemptions, but the threshold is usually lower. For example, €150 is the value limit in the 20 European Union countries that use the euro as their official currency. The UK allows foreign businesses to send parcels worth up to £135 or $182 without incurring tariff charges. In the US, the de minimis, Latin for lacking significance or importance, exemption started in 1938 as a way to save the federal government the time and expense of collecting duties on imported goods with a retail value of $1 or less. US lawmakers eventually increased the eligibility cutoff to $5 in 1990, to $200 in 1993, and $800 in 2015, according to Congressional Research Service. Since then, the number of shipments claiming de minimis egg treatment has exploded. A total of $1.36 billion packages with a combined value of $64.6 billion reached the U.S. last year, compared to 134 million packages sent under the exemption in 2015, the U.S. Customs and Border Protection Agency reported. About 60% of the 2024 shipments came from China and Hong Kong, according to an analysis logistics firm, Flexport, prepared based on U.S. government data. Multiple countries and regions accounted for the remainder, including Canada, Mexico, and European Union, India, and Vietnam. Interesting. So I guess we'll see that in September, October inflation data. Besant turns up heat on Fed as Trump reveals top 3 picks to replace Powell. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent is turning up the pressure on the Federal Reserve as his boss starts to talk more openly about the top 3 candidates who have the best shot of replacing central bank chair Jerome Powell. Bessent used a new Sunday appearance on Meet the Press and a new op-ed published by the Wall Street Journal last Friday to outline a series of critiques ranging from Fed mission creep and institutional bloat to slow action on interest rates that he argues puts the Fed behind the curve just as the labor market begins to slow. A weak jobs report released Friday, according to Bessent, shows that President Trump was right about the Fed. They are too late, and because of bad numbers, they likely would have been cutting in June. The economy added 22,000 jobs in August, weaker than the 75,000 economists expected, with the unemployment rate rising to 4.3% from 4.2%. Job growth for June was also revised into negative territory to negative 13,000 jobs. The White House took new aim at Powell following the jobs report, with the president saying in a separate Truth Social post that Jerome Too Late Powell should have lowered rates long ago. The search for Powell's successor is narrowing, according to Trump. The president on Friday said he's looking at National Economic Council Director Kevin Hassett, Fed Governor Christopher Waller, and former Fed Governor Kevin Warsh as his 3 finalists to replace Powell next May when his term ends. Quote, "You could say those are the top 3, Trump told reporters in the Oval Office. It was his most specific signal to date about who has the best chance at the job. He has made it clear he wants a chair who will lower rates, a stance that has raised concerns about the independence of the central bank." Hassett on Sunday said the Fed should be fully independent of political influence, including from the current occupant of the Oval Office. Quote, "I would say 100% that monetary policy, Federal Reserve monetary policy, needs to be fully independent of political influence, including from President Trump," end quote, Hassett told CBS News, Face the Nation. The fact is that we've looked at countries that have allowed the leaders to take over the central banks, and that what tends to happen is that it's a recipe for inflation and misery for consumers. It is clear that Trump is trying to remake the leadership of the Fed, appointing figures who are close to the White House. Let me see the comments here. There's 4 comments from someone who's not so smart, especially math. And then Jeffrey Jones asks, "Are you bullish or bearish?" Not sure. On what exactly? I mean, I'm bearish on Tesla stock, but on other stuff, I think kind of neutral right now. Let's see. Goldman Sachs chief economist: U.S. economy is in stall speed. It's a stall speed U.S. economy in need of a few interest rate cuts to reignite growth. I think we're close to stall speed. Where exactly we are relative to stall speed, it's hard to know. Goldman Sachs chief economist told me at the firm's annual, who's me? Brian Salzy. Okay. Hatsus thinks growth rate will be relatively slow before beginning to improve in 2026 following the Fed's interest rate cuts. U.S. economy created a paltry 22,000 jobs in August, badly missing economist estimates of around 75,000. The jobs figures for June and July were revised down by a total of 21,000 jobs. June saw a 13,000 decline in the number of jobs created. Blame it on Trump's tariffs, sowing the seeds of uncertainty among hiring managers or AI bulldozing through offices. The reality is that job market has cooled, and that has implications for investors. U.S. Labor Secretary downplayed the weak jobs report, putting full blame on the Fed as one would expect. Quote, if he, Powell, doesn't cut rates, the American people will continue to suffer, the U.S. Labor Secretary said on open bid. Hayes is bullish on the Fed, uncorking a series of interest cuts. I think they're going to deliver 3 cuts in September, October, December, and then probably another couple of cuts next year, he said. And that's a stretch. Hayes added, this year, fiscal policy, if you include tariffs, is a drag on growth. Next year, fiscal policy is going to boost the growth. So that's probably going to help. And then it's just a passage of time. I mean, if we manage to get through this slower period, then I think the risks that weakness feeds on itself diminish clearly. That's what Besson says as well. He's very much convinced that the economy will take off in Q4. Leap Motor CEO says global sales to hit 1 million in 2026, 4 million within a decade. Leap Motor global sales should hit 1 million in 2026 and 4 million annually within a decade, with 60% of sales coming from outside China, CEO told Reuters at the IAA Mobile Car Show in Munich on Monday. Quote, we're in the middle of our journey, Xu, who founded Leap Motor a decade ago, said in an interview. Most of our sales growth will come from overseas because that's where we see the biggest potential. Xu said that Leap Motor will more than double its vehicle lineup to 15 models in 2027, and that will include launching a plug-in hybrid. Leap Motor, a profitable upside automaker in China's crowded EV market, doubled its annual sales to 294,000 vehicles. Wow. That's amazing. I mean, at that point, Tesla had ramped the Model 3 and was growing about 50% a year. And the Chinese automakers are growing double the pace. They grew double the pace. That's amazing. Despite have been in a country where there's a lot of competition. Annual sales of 4 million vehicles would put Leap Motor in the world's top 10 automakers and not far off the sales of Stellantis, which bought a 21% stake in the Chinese automaker in October 2023. The two companies formed a joint venture that gives the Franco-Italian American car group exclusive rights to export, sell, and manufacture Leap Motor EVs outside Greater China. Xu said that Leap Motor is looking at options for building a factory in Europe. Stellantis has been rolling out Leap Motor sales across Europe, including the United Kingdom, and will start sales in South Africa this month. Over the last 12 months, Leap Motor has launched sales in around 30 new markets in Europe, the Middle East, and Africa. Earlier on Monday, Leap Motor launched an electric hatchback, the B05, at the car show, the fourth model it will sell outside of China. Leap Motor said earlier this year it would supply an EV platform to Chinese state-owned automaker FAW for its premium Hunky brand. Xu said that platform will appear on Hunky EV and that will go into production in the fourth quarter of 2026. Yeah, so the Chinese automakers are expanding to Europe and other parts of the world throughout this year and next year. And really in 2027, we're going to see what the market share of Tesla does. But it's going down. I mean, there's no question about that. There are multiple Chinese automakers now that are selling millions of vehicles, which is amazing how fast they got to this point. Let's see if there's any other. SpaceX buys wireless spectrum from EchoStar in $17 billion deal. Elon Musk's SpaceX said Monday it will buy wireless spectrum license from EchoStar for its Starlink satellite network for about $17 billion, a major deal crucial to expanding Starlink's nascent 5G connectivity business. The companies also agreed to a deal that will enable EchoStar's Boost mobile subscribers to access Starlink direct-to-cell service to extend satellite service to areas without service. The spectrum purchase allows SpaceX to start building and deploying upgraded, laser-connected satellites that the company said will expand the cell network's capacity by more than 100 times. Gwen Shotwell, president of CEO SpaceX, said the deal will help the company and mobile dead zones around the world. With exclusive spectrum, SpaceX will develop next-gen Starlink direct-to-cell satellites, which will have a step change in performance and enable us to enhance coverage for customers wherever they are in the world. The news sent shares of EchoStar surging 19% early trading. Shares of U.S. wireless carriers AT&T and T-Mobile were down more than 3%, and Verizon was down more than 2%. By the way, so there's a 19% increase in early trading for EchoStar. I think it's up, it's down a little bit since then. But if you look at the trading in the last few days, it's been creeping up quite substantially. So there's some insider trading. That's a sign of insider trading, which is not surprising given the companies involved. The push comes amid fast rising wireless usage. In 2024, Americans used a record 132 trillion megabytes of mobile data, up 35% over the prior all-time record, industry group CTIA said Monday. SpaceX has launched more than 8,000 Starlink satellites since 2020, building a distributed network in low Earth orbit, which has seen demand from militaries, transportation firms, and consumers in rural areas. Roughly 600 of those satellites, which SpaceX calls cell towers in space, have been launched since January 2024 for the company's direct-to-cell network, orbiting closer to Earth than the rest of the constellation. Crucial to those largest satellites deployment is Starship, SpaceX's giant next-gen rocket that has been under development for roughly a decade. Increasingly complex test launches have drawn the rocket closer to its first operational Starlink missions expected early next year. The deal comes months after the FCC questioned EchoStar's use of mobile satellite service spectrum and raised concerns about whether it was meeting its obligations to deploy 5G in the country. EchoStar said in its states that the transaction with SpaceX and AT&T deal will resolve the FCC's inquiries. An FCC spokesperson said the deals that EchoStar reached with AT&T and Starlink hold the potential to supercharge competition, extend innovative new services to millions of Americans, and boost U.S. leadership in next-gen connectivity. Couple more company-specific news. FedEx DHL relocate a larger air package facilities on Europe's edge. Let's just read the summary on this one. FedEx and DHL have relocated to larger air transit facilities in Turkey and Finland, respectively, to handle international package volumes more efficiently. FedEx's new Istanbul facility is 4 times larger and features advanced sorting technology, while DHL's Helsinki facility is triple the size with a €100 million investment and increased sorting capacity. That's interesting. $7,000 pieces per hour. Wow. 30 flights per week between Turkey and markets in the US, Europe, and Middle East. Okay. French government losses no confidence vote. We already talked about that. Let's talk about the iPhone 17. The iPhone 17, the thinnest iPhone ever, and everything else we're expecting out of Apple's hardware event. This is a TechCrunch article. Apple is hosting its new hardware event on September 9, tomorrow, at 10 a.m. Pacific. The company is expected to release its iPhone 17 lineup, along with the updates for the Apple Watch and AirPods. I'm looking forward to the AirPods update. They haven't updated the AirPods Pro in a while. As always, there are many rumors circulating, including bigger screens and improved cameras for the iPhone 17 models and the introduction of an ultra-thin iPhone Air that could replace the Plus model. More broadly, Bloomberg's Mark Gurman reports that this will be the first of 3 planned years of major iPhone redesigns, with a foldable iPhone coming in 2026. iPhone 17, 17 Pro, and 17 Pro Max. iPhone 17 is expected to get a significant makeover to align more closely with the Pro models. It could feature a slightly larger 6.3-inch screen, which is an increase of zero point 0.2 inches compared to the iPhone 16, as well as 120 hertz display. Wow. A substantial upgrade from the current 60 hertz. It's also rumored to have a 24 megapixel front camera. It could come in new colors, purple and green. The Pro's upgrades will be noticeable on the back of the phone, rumors suggest. Conceptual renderings show that the three rear cameras may be arranged in a rectangular bar that extends from one edge of the device to the other. The flash light sensor and microphone would be positioned far to the right side. Where MagSafe charger is, the Apple logo is said to be centered for aesthetic reasons. Notably, the iPhone 17 Pro may switch materials, potentially replacing the titanium band around the screen with aluminum. This could help Apple reduce costs as well as provide a lighter feel. The iPhone 17 Pro Max is expected to see fewer upgrades too, with the most significant change being a slightly thicker body, likely to accommodate a larger battery, which would be a huge win. I don't know. I mean, Pro Max is already super heavy. 17 is predicted to be around a price around $800, and the Pro Max expected to have a price tag around $1,250. New colors for the Pro models potentially include dark blue and copper. The Pro model is expected to be priced around $1,100. However, a recent leak indicates that there will be fewer storage options compared to the 16 Pro. Users may lose 128 gigs option and will only have three choices: 256, 512, and 1 terabytes, down from the typical four options. Okay. Yeah, I'm still most excited about AirPods, and guess we'll see. All right. On that note, thank you very much, everybody, and I will chat with you all next time. Take care.